Hello Dungeons & Dragons fans, T.H. Leatherman here. Today we're going to discuss the top 10 house rules for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. So 5e is the latest iteration for Dungeons & Dragons. And there are a lot of things I like about the system. There are a few things I don't like about the system. One of the great things about Dungeons & Dragons is its flexibility. Every Dungeon Master does things a little bit differently, and a lot of us have our own house rules that make the game more fun for our players. A lot of Dungeon Masters out there use very similar rules to the ones that I do, but these are the ones that I like, so I'm going to give them to you. House rule number 1. Rolling a 20 or a 1 on initiative rolls. This house rule is that if a player rolls a 20 or a 1 on their initiative rolls, they either get advantage or disadvantage on their attack rolls. Advantage means that you get to roll the die 20 twice when making attacks and take the best roll of the two. Likewise, disadvantage means that you roll twice and take the worst of the two scores.
Haha, natural 20. Haha, I get advantage. Ha.
House rule number 2, critical rolls. Now, the rules in 5e give you the option of taking either double damage or get max damage on the rolls. I've decided that I want my players to get a real kick out of rolling a natural 20. If my players roll a natural 20 on their attack rolls, they get to max out their dice plus roll damage again and then add their modifiers on the end. This makes for some truly spectacular hits that the characters will be talking about for game sessions to come.
Oh yeah, look at that hit! Ha 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 ha! That's what I call more power.
House rule number 3, critical fails. Now, a lot of Dungeon Masters use tables for critical fails. If you roll a 1, you've done really, really badly. The problem with this is that some of the outcomes are really, really bad and unfair to the players. So, while I do use a table for critical fails, it's very simplified. There are only a few items that actually can happen. So if my players get a critical fail, I have them roll a die 10. On a roll of a 1, they hit their friend. Ouch. On a roll of a 2, they trip up their friend. On a roll of a 3, they get disadvantage on their next round. If they roll a 4, they fumble their weapon and have to spend a round trying to find it and pick it up again. With spells, this also equates to the spell having an unintended effect. And yes, the magic user loses the spell slot. Number 5, half damage. And 6 through 10, nothing happens. As a Dungeon Master, it's really fun for me to see the players go, ooh, 1! And then they roll a die 10, and if they get above a 6, then they're always really happy and saying, whew, dodged the bullet. But if they get a 1 through 5, they're like, oh, what happens? Oh, that's bad. It adds a lot more fun kibitzing between rounds. Ooh, 4. That's fart cloud instead of searing ray. It stinks so bad it burns the nose. Ah! Number 4, death saves. Now, I'm not a big fan of the death save system. You get to make saving throws to stabilize. I've decided that this is just a little too complicated for me. So for my players, I've got negative constitution to their hit points. So if a player has a 12 constitution, they get to go to negative 12 before they're declared officially dead. The caveat to this is that you want to have your clerics and healers getting on those injured players as soon as possible. So I've added a bleed mechanic to it. So the character gets worse every round that no one does anything to help the character. So in the example, if the character gets a negative 8, they have 4 rounds before the character is officially dead. Each round you add a -1 to their health, until they reach that -12, in which case they're officially dead. And as many dungeon masters know, sometimes you fudge the rules so that the character doesn't die. In my case, sometimes I fudge the rules for them, and other times I'm like, okay, do you want to roll up a new character? You'd be surprised the number of times where someone says, yeah, I'm getting tired of this one, let me roll up something new. Oh, look at you who knows so much. Just so you know, your character's only mostly dead. House rule number 5, hit points. As everyone knows, hit points are the life of the party. So if a character gains a level and rolls hit dice for their hit points, they will get half if they roll less than half on that roll. This keeps players from getting screwed if they roll a 1 over and over again on their hit points. They will at least get half their dice. So if they get die 8s for hit points, if they roll a 3, then they'll automatically get a 5. If they roll die 10 for hit dice, then they automatically get a 6. And if they roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5.
I want half, Rogue. I want half. You have to give me half.
House rule number 6, luck points. Now I know that other dungeon masters have something similar to this. The truth is that the inspiration system that Dungeons & Dragons has for good role-playing doesn't work all that well. If the halfling rogue plays up being sneaky really well, if the paladin does really well at trying to be an advocate for their god, these are things that give the players extra points for role-playing because they do things really well. Perhaps they came up with a really great strategy for attacking a creature. This also would generate extra points. For these luck points, the players get to roll a die 6, and then they keep those points off to the side to a maximum of 10 points to encourage them to use them or any of the additional ones they get to lose. These luck points can be added or subtracted from any die 20 roll. So, if they are making a saving throw, they can fudge it up a little bit if they have some luck points to spend. If they almost hit the creature, they can use a luck point to absolutely hit the creature. Another thing is that if you add luck points to get your roll up to a 20, it is not a natural crit. So again, luck points take the place of inspiration points for good role-playing by your players.
What I want to know is, do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
House rule number 7, timed tactical combat. Every DM experiences this. The game rolls along and then the players get into combat, and then they spend 5-10 minutes in between each person's turn discussing what each player should be doing next. This slows down the combat and really slows down the game. To improve the game mechanics, I give the players 30 seconds to tell me what they're going to do. If they go over that, they've skipped a turn. This may seem a bit mean, but after it happens a couple of times, you'll find that every player is really good about getting their moves in on time. Doesn't mean that they can't discuss tactics, but the discussion of those tactics needs to take place before or after the combat as a way of deciding what they're going to do when the next combat occurs.
What we need to do is ambush these guys. We're going to go up on that ledge, and then we're going to rain death down on them.
No, we're going to flank them. We'll put people around the left and the right. We'll catch them in a pincer maneuver. It's the best way to take care of these creatures. Trust me. House rule number 8. Leaving the table causes damage. Now, I'm not saying that if someone gets up to get food or goes to the bathroom, you need to be damaging them. However, if your players are looking at their smartphones, kibitzing about what they're going to be doing next week, these are things that take away from the gameplay and get people with their minds wandering and not really into what you're doing, playing D&D. To combat this, What I do is if someone leaves the table or is not paying attention to what's going on in the game, I do a die 10 damage to them. This die 10 can be healed normally, but it gets them in the habit of saying, oh, I probably shouldn't be doing this right now because we're playing a game together. Hey, dude, check out this cat video. Rule number 9, max healing for healing potions. Now, healing potions are great for getting hit points back in the middle of combat. Your party should always have a supply of them in case they get into a really nasty battle. But there is nothing worse for a player than if you roll your 2 die 4 and get 3 hit points back. You spent good gold on that healing potion and it just kind of fizzled. For this reason, it's always a good idea to have maximum healing for healing potions. This doesn't mean that every time your party goes into town, they need to be buying up 20, 30, 40 healing potions. Limit the amount that are actually in each town so the party doesn't overdo it.
This is just a flesh wound. Ha ha ha!
House rule number 10. The party knows when a creature is injured. When the party gets a creature down to half hit points or less than half hit points, at that time you let the party know, oh, that creature isn't looking so hot. It stumbles a little bit. It's got blood coming out of its shoulder. You can use this as a method to tell the players that the creature is injured and that if they concentrate on that creature, they can probably knock it out in a short amount of time. It's not uncommon for my party to cheer when they get a particularly tough monster down to half hit points. It adds a lot of fun to the game.
Wait, I think the monster is hurt.
Ah! 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 Anyway, this is TH's top 10 house rules for Dungeons & Dragons games. Now, I'm not saying you have to include all of these. Your game, your rules. Play it however you like. But if you found any of these rules useful, consider including them in your next game. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel. I post weekly. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover, message me on Facebook. If you enjoyed this episode, like or comment below. So long, Dungeons & Dragons fans.